The State Department has stopped scheduling visa interviews for international students as it plans more thorough screenings of the applicants' social media posts. And SpaceX lost another huge Starship rocket yesterday. Good morning, I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. The State Department is planning a more thorough screening of social media posts by foreign students who are applying for U.S. visas. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports it could make it tough for students to get an appointment with the U.S. consulate in the near future.
Consulates should not add any additional student visa appointments until they get further guidance on how the new social media screening will work. That's according to a diplomatic cable seen by NPR that calls for, quote, extra vigilance in the student visa process. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce would not comment on the leaked cable.
We will continue to use every tool we can to assess who it is that's coming here, whether they are students or otherwise.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said he's canceled thousands of student visas, including for students who took part in protests against Israel's war in Gaza. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Several hundred people turned out yesterday at Harvard University. They protested the Trump administration's order the university's international students leave Harvard or face expulsion from the U.S. President Trump is also seeking to strip all federal funding from the university. The administration claims Harvard fosters anti-Semitism, a claim university officials reject. Jacob Miller is a former president of the student Jewish group Harvard Hillel. He told rally-goers the Trump administration directives are intended to drive people apart.
The administration's excuse for these policies, that they somehow address anti-Semitism, are so absurd. Let's be clear. This has nothing to do with combating anti-Semitism.
The Trump administration has appealed another immigration-related decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. This time, the administration is hoping the justices allow for the deportations of migrants to South Sudan. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports the Homeland Security Agency says some countries will not take the migrants back.
The administration arranged for South Sudan, a politically unstable country in Africa, to take them in, but a Massachusetts federal judge ruled anyone deported to anywhere that's not their country of origin needs more time to contest their deportation. Specifically, migrants should get an interview where they have a chance to say they may face violence or persecution if sent to a specific country. Trump officials hope the Supreme Court overrules this Massachusetts order, which applies nationwide. They argue the pause on these so-called third-party deportations hurts foreign policy and national security and intrudes on the executive branch's immigration policy powers. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
The federal sex trafficking trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs has continued. A high-ranking former employee of Combs took the witness stand yesterday. She testified Combs repeatedly threatened and once kidnapped her at gunpoint. NPR's Anastasia Tsoukalos reports.
Capricorn Clark, a former marketing executive, testified that Combs kidnapped her as part of a chaotic incident in which Combs attempted to confront rapper Scott Mescudi, also known as Kid Cudi. Combs had learned that Cudi and his on-and-off girlfriend, the singer Cassie Ventura, were dating, and that Clark knew about the relationship but did not tell him. Clark also testified that Combs and his associates had repeatedly threatened to kill her. Clark quit repeatedly during the 14 years she worked for him, but said she was unable to secure another job in the music industry. Anastasia Tsoukalos, NPR News, New York.
Home insurance companies in Texas are using aerial photos and artificial intelligence to decide if they want to keep insuring homes. From member station KUT, Audrey McGlinchey reports homeowners are increasingly upset.
Since 2023, the state of Texas has investigated at least a dozen complaints over the use of aerial photos. One resident, Elena Callahan, got a letter saying the insurance policy on her home near Houston would not be renewed unless she got a new roof. But Callahan says her roof is 5 years old and in good condition. Callahan worries her insurer was looking at the wrong house. She asked, but never got copies of the aerial images.
Where's the images? What images are they using?
The use of aerial photos is one tool that insurers are using as more companies are choosing not to renew policies amid worsening storms. Federal data show that between 2020 and 2023, the non-renewal rate in Texas nearly doubled. For NPR News, I'm Audrey McGlinchey in Austin.
Israel has started a plan to allow some limited food distribution in Gaza. For nearly 3 months, it has cut off the UN and other relief groups from distributing aid in the Palestinian enclave. This week, thousands of Palestinians gathered to try to get some of the new food aid, but the process was mired in chaos. 3 deaths were reported. Witnesses say people were shot by Israeli forces and others wounded. Israel says one of its helicopters fired warning shots to break up large crowds. NPR's Aya Batrawi says the new aid process is chaotic.
So again, unlike how the UN distributes food or used to distribute food in centers across Gaza with IDs and lists of families in need, the system had none of that. There were no screenings or lists and no clarity on who decides who gets the aid and who doesn't.
NPR's Aya Batrawi reporting. No aid is reaching northern Gaza. Several trucks intended for Gaza City yesterday were stopped. Hungry crowds took food boxes directly off the aid trucks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Berlin today. He's talking with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz about ways to bring an end to Russia's war in his country. Esme Nicholson reports Ukraine is looking for increased support as Russia's bombing campaign intensifies.
Speaking to journalists after a one-on-one meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart, Friedrich Merz said Germany and Ukraine have agreed to start the joint production of long-range missiles. Merz said cooperation on an industrial level will take place both in Ukraine and in Germany. The German leader raised hopes earlier this week that he would green-light the delivery of Taurus missiles to Ukraine, but stressed in the press conference with Zelenskyy that such decisions will not be discussed in public. Merz did promise to continue and expand Germany's military support for Ukraine. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
The private company SpaceX launched its 9th test flight of its Starship rocket yesterday. As NPR's Jeff Brumfield reports, it did not go well.
Starship lifted off from the coast of Texas to loud cheers from SpaceX employees. It shot out over the Caribbean, separated from its giant booster rocket, and powered its way to the edge of space.
What a moment.
Incredible.
All right.
That was better than the last 2 flights, which exploded shortly after launch. But all was not well aboard Starship. About a half hour into the flight, it began to tumble out of control.
At this point, we are kind of in a spin.
The Starship is presumed to have broken apart somewhere high above the Indian Ocean. Jeff Brumfield, NPR News.
This is NPR.